So the title of this talk is DeSitter double star experiment does not prove Einstein's relativity, and this part of Einstein's relativity is special relativity. So there are misrepresentations by physicists that the DeSitter double star experiment proves Einstein's special relativity. But the situation is again like that which I pointed out in my video, lies about the Michelson-Morley experiment. There is an issue of underdetermination, which means that experiments can be interpreted by more than one theory. So those who say the DeSitter double star experiment proves special relativity are misrepresenting an experiment. The experiment can be interpreted by different theories, and omitting to mention that just means that they are biased in wanting to promote special relativity instead of accurately stating what an experiment shows. So often physicists will admit no experiment can prove a theory, but they usually seem unaware what that really means, namely the issue of underdetermination, that experiments can be interpreted by more than one theory. For those who believe in Einstein's relativity, they often don't seem to know that and display a bias to their belief in Einstein's relativity when reporting on experiments. So now what we have is a reminder of what special relativity is from Wikipedia. It's pointing out the two postulates that it's supposedly based upon, and these postulates are vague, but anyway, working with what's given. Here is DeSitter's paper. It's less than a page and in German. Relying on this translation, it translates to an astronomical proof for the constancy of the speed of light. And it says, when a source of light has a speed of u, say in the direction of the positive x-axis, according to the theory of X, he's thinking of an emission theory, which says the speed of light emitted in the same direction is c plus u, where c is the speed of light emitted by a resting source. In other theories, brackets Lorentz, Einstein, the speed of light is always constant, and I dispute that interpretation, but that's what he's saying, equal to c, independent of the movement of the source. Now it is to be seen that Ritchie's accepted dependence of the speed of light on the movement of the source is absolutely inadmissible. So that's the claim of DeSitter's paper, if we can rely on the translation. Carrying on with the paper, it shows the setup where there are two stars going around in a circle, and in one star is at point A, the light going from it in Ritchie's theory would be going to the right at speed c plus u, and the star at B would be emitting light at the speed of c minus u. Now these additional speeds would be added in the normal Newtonian way and not be using the relativistic speed addition. The first thing to note is that it's an indirect experiment and not a direct experiment like the Michelson-Morley experiment. In the Michelson-Morley experiment, you have both ends of the travelling light in the lab, while in the DeSitter experiment, you have one end of the experiment happening in the distant stars before it gets to Earth. That's probably why many physicists usually prefer to cite the Michelson-Morley experiment instead of the DeSitter experiment. The Michelson-Morley experiment is a more direct experiment, and it's more hands-on and not relying on astronomical observations. Anyway, continuing. So the issue becomes, can we find fault with the paper of DeSitter? And the answer is, of course, we can find lots of faults. So going by this person, Patrick Rennie, who runs this website on advanced mathematics. So this is the paper dealing with DeSitter's proof of the constancy of the speed of light from Patrick. So he refers to DeSitter calling it a proof and says the word proof is a bit strong. What this argument provides is a plausibility argument. Thus it's not a proof, as DeSitter calls it. Instead, it is a plausibility argument. So DeSitter is miscalling it a proof. And the plausibility issue being brought up is, how plausible is it to treat light speed as constant? See how easily physicists can misrepresent things. They can call something a proof when it isn't. They can misuse words in lots of ways like that to suit their biased point of view. Anyway, continuing on, Patrick says, if we assume that the speed of light propagation is affected by the speed of its source relative to the frame in which it's being measured, then we get a plausible condition on which it is possible to see an orbiting star appear at opposite ends on its orbit at the same time, contrary to observation. Hence we conclude that one or more of our assumptions is wrong, and that would be that the speed of light is emitted by a source is dependent on the relative speed of that source compared to the frame measuring it. At this point we make a bunch of reasonable assumptions about the situation. First, and so on, he says, note the word bunch. Suddenly have to start introducing more assumptions. It's not a case of light speed constant assumption versus non-constant light speed assumption. Instead have to introduce more assumptions than just that. So if you're going to do some maths on it, whether you're going to treat it as a light speed constant or as light speed not constant, you have to start introducing a lot of assumptions. So the DeSitter proof of special relativity is not a proof, it's a plausibility argument. We have to introduce a lot more assumptions than just assuming light speed constant. Thus really what it is an experiment that Einstein's relativity believers have a bias interpreting from their belief in Einstein's relativity, when really there is an issue of underdetermination where the experiment can be interpreted by lots of different theories. So it's the same as what I pointed out with the Michelson-Morley experiment video, which was called Lies About Michelson-Morley Experiment and Light Speed Constancy. There is underdetermination in the experiments that are supposed to show special relativity, meaning the experiments are interpreted by the believers in terms of Einstein's relativity, and they don't often want to admit that those experiments have different interpretations. So going on to this person is John Norton. He's a distinguished professor and he specialises in Einstein's relativity. He's written, he's been an editor to collected papers of Albert Einstein and so forth. So this is what Norton says. In addition to his work as editor of the Einstein papers and finding source material. Satchel, that's another person working with Norton, assembled the many small clues that reveal Einstein's serious consideration of an emission theory of light, and that's a sort of theory that Ritz was considering. And he gave us the crucial insight that Einstein regarded the Michelson-Morley experiment as evidence for the principle of relativity, whereas later writers almost universally use it as support for the light postulate of special relativity. Even today, this point needs emphasis. The Michelson-Morley experiment is fully compatible with an emission theory of light that contradicts the light postulate, which means Michelson-Morley experiment need not be interpreted via special relativity, and neither of the other experiments, such as DeSitter experiment, need to be interpreted via special relativity because other theories are allowed. So a reminder, the people who say Michelson-Morley experiment shows the speed of light constancy are saying things wrong. They should be saying that the Michelson-Morley experiment is being interpreted from a belief in a theory with light speed constancy, but can be interpreted by other theories. And those people who believe experiments such as the DeSitter experiment shows light speed constancy are also saying it wrong. They should be saying experiments that are being interpreted from a belief in a theory with light speed constancy can be interpreted by other theories. It's the general method of many in the mainstream to talk incorrectly about physics. So when they start saying we have a proof, well, they're misusing the word proof. And so on the issue of underdetermination, they generally forget to deal with that when they're talking about experiment. They're just going to have a bias and believe in Einstein's relativity. They're going to interpret any experiment they can by Einstein's relativity and then forget to deal with the issue of saying the experiment can be interpreted by other theories. So they're going to misrepresent physics. Finished. Thank you. This is the end of the short little talk explaining how messed up these people are when they talk about physics.